This is Hockey Talk, episode 13, where we talk everything hockey. We are recording on June the 6th, 2024, and I am John.
And I'm Mike.
Okay, Mike, let's go. Okay, the first topic this evening, Mike, is I want to go over what happened in both the conference finals. I think it's a good place to start. Let's start in the East, though. The Rangers lost in 6 games, and even though it was close, I would argue that it really wasn't that close. The New York Rangers had a total of 151 shots in 6 games, which is an average of 25.2 per game. The Panthers had 202 shots total, which works out to 33.7 shots per game. Shesterkin is arguably the best goalie in the playoffs. I think he's the best goalie in the playoffs. I know people can argue that. But the Rangers still lost. Mike, what in hell happened to the Rangers?
Well, that series went pretty much exactly as I was expecting it to. Uh, Florida, you know, played a physical style, which has been working for them, and the Rangers just could not seem to adapt to it. Most of the Rangers' top guys were not very effective. So, if you don't have your top guys going, you can have Shesterkin make all the saves in the world, but sooner or later, he's going to give some up. And he didn't give up many, but it was enough for Florida to get the win. So yeah, that's what that series came down to. Is I don't think the Rangers were able to adjust to the Panthers' physical style of play, and Florida got good production through their first three lines, and they were offensively puck possession, had the puck far more than the Rangers did.
Right. Right. I didn't look at the puck possession time, but now that you mention that, I wish I had looked that up and seen what it was. I'm sure it was quite one sided.
Yeah, I don't recall all the exact numbers, but I do recall when I watched some of the games, they were talking about puck possession and offensive zone time and that sort of stuff, and both were in Florida's favor pretty much the whole series.
Right, right. And I'm sure that most people that are Rangers fans wouldn't have thought that the Rangers would only have 25 shots on net on average. It's not really a lot of shots. I mean, it's okay, but
Right.
compared to
Um,
33.7, that's quite substantially higher.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they needed to get more shots and more traffic in front of Bobrovsky to take advantage of him because, like as I said before the series started, like the Rangers have the edge in nets. However, when you're giving up that many more shots, like it was what, how many shots did Florida have again per game roughly? It was over 30.
Yeah, 33.7.
Yeah, so when you're out shooting, the Rangers by almost 10 shots a game, as good as Shesterkin is, there's some that are going to get by him, and as we've seen, you know, he couldn't have done much more than he did, but the Rangers just couldn't get any offense going.
Yes, I mean, I don't believe very many of those goals were Shesterkin's fault. I mean, there probably is one somewhere, but
Right.
I don't think too many of them were his fault. He did everything he could.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see if the Rangers change their team any to
I
try and
think,
prepare more for playoff hockey.
well, I think the Rangers are missing. I mean, Kreider is probably the most physical player on their
Mhm.
top two lines. And when you have to start playing, Rempe to get physicality in your lineup,
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
not
the
going to
guy
cut it.
doesn't have great hands. So, I mean, other than bringing the physical aspect, that's all he pretty much brings to the game. And as I said, with the Rangers having to rely on Kreider, who's one of their scorers, to
Right,
play the physical game, they needed some other guys that could step up on the forward lines that could play a little
right.
more physical because as we've talked before, Florida has pretty much one on every line that can go and grind and bang in the corners. So
Right. And and earlier when we were doing these shows earlier on, I called the Florida Panthers the better version of the Boston Bruins.
mhm.
They just play a
Yes.
better
Yeah.
version of Boston's game, sort of thing.
Well, what hurt Boston was losing Bergeron and Krejci. When they lost
Yeah,
those two guys and really didn't replace them, I mean, and I don't think they really had the cap space to replace them. And also last year, Boston had Bertuzzi as well. So,
that's
you know,
right.
the Bruins were better set up last year than they were this year because they basically couldn't replace those guys. They needed their guys to step up, and the depth just wasn't the same as what they had last year, and that was the difference, I think, with Boston.
Right, right. Well, you got that series right, though, Mike, with the Rangers and Florida. But the next series in the West, the second topic of this evening, the Dallas Stars and the Edmonton Oilers. I pleaded with you to switch to the Edmonton Oilers. I pleaded. You said no. I rolled my eyes because I agreed with you. I just wanted a miracle to happen. And, this series, you weren't correct on it, but hey, you can't get them all right.
Yeah,
You know, uh, just because you got it incorrect doesn't mean anything. You're 12 out of 14 for the playoffs so far, which is a really good record. And I am glad that the Oilers won. It makes me very happy, but I'm sad that you got the series wrong. But Mike, after game 3, the Stars just couldn't score more than 2 goals in a game. And in the
yeah,
last 2 games, they only scored 1 goal. Now, I
yeah.
don't know about you, but you're not going to win too many games when you're scoring 1 goal, you know. So just what the hell happened besides that?
Well, I mean, Dallas did nothing literally on the power play, and
No, they didn't.
and neither team was great on the power play. However, they had some chances. I think Edmonton, when McDavid had that double minor, and they didn't capitalize on that. I believe it was Game 5 or Game 6.
Right.
Um, yeah, you with the Oilers, Dallas needed to get the early lead and hold on to it. The problem is in the last game, they gave up the lead like 2 goals on 4 shots, so they were
Mm-hmm.
behind right off the get go. And you can't get yourself behind against an offensive team like Edmonton that quickly. Um, and the other thing too is Ottinger was average. He wasn't he wasn't better than Skinner. Skinner
No, he
stepped his
wasn't.
game up, and that made a big difference. Like Dallas outshot Edmonton, I think, in the majority of the games that were played, if not all of them. Um, However, they just couldn't seem to get a goal past Skinner. I mean, he played very well. Ottinger was average at best, and and the depth on Dallas just didn't seem to be as productive as they were in the previous series. Pavelski didn't really do anything at all the whole
That's
playoffs.
right. Yeah.
The first line was inconsistent. Second line, same thing. Although Jamie Benn and Sagan, their line did seem to be the most productive out of all of them. And the Oilers were able to keep Wyatt Johnson off the board, and he was one of Dallas's hottest guys. So other than I think he scored a couple of goals in the series, but
He
uh,
did.
I think they needed a little bit more out of him and out of the third line. Marchment didn't do much. Stankoven didn't do much. So, uh, Edmonton was able to shut down the depth that Dallas has, and that's the difference in the series. They just played better.
Something else too that I noticed that really, shocked me, and I think that's an appropriate word here, is I expected Dallas's depth players to play much better than Edmonton's, and in the end, Edmonton's depth players were the ones scoring goals and getting points, and I was like, I was really surprised. I was not expecting that. Now, maybe you can't expect that from Edmonton's depth players every series, but they got the job done.
Yeah, no,
So, and Edmonton did score on the power play, and Dallas couldn't.
yeah,
And
and
Edmonton
Edmonton
scored a
did get
shorthanded
some
goal.
shorthanded goals. Yeah, so and I mean, that's the thing, and when Dallas had when they had I forget which game it was, they were up 2-0 fairly quick in the game, and then they gave those 2 goals back, and Edmonton ended up winning 4-2. I believe it was maybe game four,
Five to
game four,
two.
game five.
Yeah, it was
Um,
5-2. Yeah, it was game
yeah,
four.
yeah. So yeah, I thought Dallas was going to be better than what they were, and Edmonton, I think, just they stepped on the gas pedal, and they didn't let off it. So,
Yeah.
and that's basically what they needed to do. So good on them.
Edmonton just looks like a different team this year. I mean, they took out Vancouver in seven, which was tough,
Yeah,
but they did it. And they beat Dallas, who I thought, was going to win the whole darn thing potentially. And,
they're
I agreed
definitely
with
the
you.
favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Skinner, I just didn't think Skinner was as good of a goalie. I thought he was shaky. He didn't
Well,
look great. And it looks like
well,
I was
that's
wrong.
exactly it. I mean, he had some games where he was either average or below average in the previous series, but Edmonton was good enough to win. But in this series, he stepped his game up and played much better. I think he had one bad game in the whole series. Other
Yep.
than that, he was pretty consistent. So, and they're going to need that going into the next one.
All right. Well, let's go on to the third topic then, since we're talking about the next one. Let's talk about the finals, Mike. Who do you think is going to win the Stanley Cup, and why do you think that they're going to win the Stanley Cup? Now, do you believe, what do you believe are the factors for who you're going to pick here to win, uh, to win the Stanley Cup? What do you think?
My pick to win is Florida, uh, much to your dismay, I'm sure. Um, the reason why I'm picking Florida is the same reason I've picked Florida throughout the playoffs so far. I think that their physical style of play is going to be, tough for Edmonton to match. Now, with that being said, if Florida plays physical and the referees decide to start calling penalties, then that works to Edmonton's advantage because I think Edmonton's power play is probably a little bit better than Florida's, even though Florida's is very good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when it comes to overall team depth, I think Florida's got a slight edge in that department. When it comes to goaltending, Florida should have the edge, but it all depends on what Bobrovsky shows up to play. If it's the Bobrovsky that's been playing all playoffs so far, I think they've got the edge. And the Oilers are really going to need Skinner to play like he did in the last series to make sure that this doesn't get out of hand. Pick Florida to win. I think it's going to go 6 or 7. I don't think it's going to be a short series. I think the Oilers are going to give them a run for their money. Um, but I do think Florida's going to pull this out.
And do you think that the power play will have any
Well,
bearing on this? Because
no, I
I know
think
you're just talking about the power play, but
I think it's going to be a series where the power play is going to come into play, um,
hmm,
more so than the last 2 series, where the power play wasn't really much of a factor.
hmm.
In this series, I think the power play is definitely going to be a factor. I mean, both teams are very potent on the power play. I think that the team that does better on the power play is going to have the advantage in the series. Um, and I just think that Florida is overall a little bit more consistent, whereas Edmonton relies on their top power play line more than Florida. I think Florida has 2 power play lines that can be productive. So we shall see how that goes.
Now I know you said which Bobrovsky's going to show up, which Skinner is going to show up, maybe too.
Well, yeah,
But if you have to make a guess, which goalie do you think shines more here?
I gotta go with yeah. Geez, it's tough, but I'm gonna go with Bobrovsky now. And one of the things that I'm curious to see is, we know Florida plays a physical style. As we've seen in the last series, Florida likes to put guys in the front of the net to drive the goalie crazy. I mean, we've seen Shesterkin taking swings at guys.
He did,
Um,
yes.
so if they can do that with Skinner and get it in his head a little bit, if they can do this with Shesterkin and he's one of the best goalies in the league, I wouldn't necessarily say Skinner is at Shesterkin's level. So if they can throw Skinner off his game by playing the physical style in front of him, then it works even more to Florida's advantage.
It's going to be interesting to see if Edmonton's depth players can get points, because if they can, then this could be a real series, and if they can't, it
Yeah,
could be
yeah, I'm
trouble
looking forward
brewing.
to it. I think it's going to be a really good series. I think the games are going to be close games. I don't see blowouts in this series. And if you look at the style of play that Florida has, none of their games were really blowouts for the most part.
No,
They might have had a
no,
few, but all the games against the Rangers were relatively close on the scoreboard, even though they dominated
yep,
puck possession. I don't think they're going to dominate in that way against Edmonton. I think the Oilers' more skilled players like Draisaitl, McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, and these guys are probably going to adapt a little bit better than the Rangers did. So it remains to be seen, but I'm really looking forward to the series starting on Saturday. Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
and both teams have had lots of rest,
Mhm.
so that
Yes,
shouldn't be an
definitely.
issue.
That won't be a factor whatsoever. Um, eh, I mean, Florida has home ice advantage. It's going to be interesting. If they can get off to a quick start, it'll definitely be to their advantage.
Right, right. And which puppy is making the
Oh,
weird
that's
noise in the
Pax.
background?
He was quiet through the first first while of this, and now he always seems to get himself going there right around the end. He should calm down there a little bit though now.
Well, Pax, maybe he's upset that Dallas lost. Maybe that's what's going on.
Yeah,
Okay, so you're picking Florida in 6 or 7. You think it's going to be a long series. You think it's going to be a good series,
yeah.
and we'll have to wait and see how things pan out. So, of course, I'm hoping the Oilers win, but I think Florida's a really good team, so it's not going to be easy.
Right.
All right. Well, is there anything else you wanted to go over tonight, or?
I think that pretty much covers it. I knew that we weren't going to have a ton of stuff with only one series left, so we'll get this one, and I mean, our next show will be probably at the midway part of the series. I think it's after
Yep.
Game 4.
Yep.
So they play what, Saturday, Monday, and do they have the 3 games off after that? Or the
I
three
am not.
days?
I'm not sure. I'll have to check the
I
schedule and
I
see. I
think
don't
there's
know.
three games in between game two, 3 days, sorry, between game 2 and game 3. So I think they're back the following Thursday. So I think it's game 3 that they'll be into when we do our next show.
Okay. All right. Well, uh, leave a comment and tell us where we went wrong. Please don't like, share, or subscribe, because why in the hell would you? All right. We'll see you next time, folks. Later. Goodbye.
All right, later.